To start off this retrospect, we have a beautiful rendition of "Welcome to the Black Parade" by our very own Corinne here. So take it away, Corinne.
All right, it's gonna be a little shaky, but I'll try my best.
All right, all right, all right.
I love this one.
Okay, welcome everyone. So, I guess we should all start by saying who we are, and I guess I'll go first. So, hi, my name is Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway, and I have long ebony black hair. That's how I got my name. With purple streaks and red tips that reaches my mid-back and icy blue eyes like limpid tears. And a lot of people tell me I look like Amy Lee. Author's note, if you don't know who she is, get the hell out of here. I'm not related to Gerard Way, but I wish I was because he's a major fucking hottie.
Uh, I think you're Kasha. Are you reading a? Is that a fan fiction that you wrote or something?
Oh!
That is not. No. That's who
famous.
I am.
Oh,
So really, if you actually look in the original My Immortal, so this has been changed over time, but originally My Immortal said, "Hi, my name is Kasha Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway," but it got changed over time. It got lost in the seas of time. So.
Okay, I see. That makes sense. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Indieheads Retrospect. We're back with the third episode of this series, where we kind of look back on records that are very important to our sort of our canons as music listeners. And for episode 3, we're taking a slight detour in terms of what could be considered indie, but I don't care because this is my podcast, and I feel like this album is actually is very important for like a lot of people who consider themselves indie heads nowadays. So once again, of course, I am Matt, aka @Moravian Prince on Twitter. On this special edition of the pod, of course, we have.
so yeah, it's Corinne. Corinne Heaven. First time I was on this podcast, it was an accident, and I was off 3 Modellas screaming about Daft Punk. But now I am off half of an edible screaming about My Chemical Romance. Hello.
That's growth. And it's Kasha, and I've definitely been featured on this so many times in snippets, but it's at Sad Yelp Review on Twitter. So
Yes. So this podcast has been brewing for a little bit now.
it's been big emo hours in the chat for a while.
It has been.
It has.
So I guess before we kind of get into this, of course, we're talking about My Chemical Romance is the Black Parade, their third studio album and probably their most well-known album at this point, since the band has kind of been broken up for some time. And I guess before we kind of get more into the album, let's kind of talk about our personal histories with My Chem. And I will pass this off to Kasha. What is your history with My Chemical Romance? How did you get into them? And I guess what was your kind of your history with this album before now or whenever it came out?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so as many people know, I have been an emo kid since I was like 4 years old. I remember like riding my bike around my suburban neighborhood, and I was like, what is the meaning of life? And my mom was like, please stop. We have bills to pay. but but I remember when I was like 8 years old, my brother's girlfriend downloaded all of her songs onto my iPod because I couldn't afford an iTunes account. And and Panic at the Disco was probably my number one emo like go-to. But MCR was definitely a close second. And so this album was, when did it come out? I think
2006. It was 2006.
2006, right. So I was in middle school, and it was just like I mean I was like part of an emo group, so everyone listened to MCR and Panic, and yeah, and my mom wouldn't let me get Coontails, which was so sad because I needed it for like my my aesthetic that I had going on. But yes, so this album was fairly important to me at the time. But
Oh yeah, Corinne. What about you, Corinne? What is your history with MCR?
Okay, so MCR, I'm pretty sure the first time I heard Welcome to the Black Parade, I heard it on KROQ, K-Rock, because I lived in LA and that was, premier rock station, how I found out about my music taste. And I heard it and I was like, oh my God, this is insane. And I mean, I was like 7 years old at the time, which makes me like the baby of the podcast, I guess. And so yeah, I had to grow into loving MCR and everything, emo, whatever. But definitely my mom raising me on The Cure and Depeche Mode did not did not help. It did help a lot. But when I first actually like fully listened to Welcome to the Black Parade, I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. This is our generation's Bohemian Rhapsody. This is so good." It was incredible listening to it for the first time, and that's why I have pink hair today. Gerard Way.
All right, and then my history. Let's see. I got into My Chem, I want to say sometime, I think it was a little bit before this album dropped or around the time that it dropped. I like Helena and The Ghost of You, the music videos for those played like all the time on like MTV and MTV2. And so that's how I first discovered them, I think. I think Helena was just randomly popped up when I was watching MTV2, and I was like instantly like enchanted by them. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. It was like the video for that, AFI's Miss Murder, and I Write Sins Not Tragedies. Like those three videos like changed my fucking life for a brief period of time. So I was also like, yeah, like around like also like along with My Chem, like also as a big Panic fan. And I think we'll kind of, as we talk about the Black Parade, I think we'll kind of discuss why My Chem are still so revered compared to like, I guess like Panic nowadays, which, oh boy, Shell, their former selves.
Oh yeah,
you can't so awesome without me.
I have so many thoughts on that for sure. But just on a side note, Matty, like Helena, the music video literally changed my life. But also when I remember my like middle school talent show, like me and a bunch of my emo friends were like, we're gonna recreate the music video on stage.
You told the story once, I think.
Right. I remember we were talking to our woodshop teacher and we were like, okay, so what if we like make a coffin that we can use on stage? And he was like, we're just not gonna let you guys do that.
Oh my God.
Jesus.
Like we were in pre-production.
A coffin.
One of the girls was a ballerina. Like we had this whole thing set up. Like it was ridiculous, but also just yeah. So it's very funny.
Oh my God.
Definitely.
God, I think the Black Parade, it was either the first or like the second CD that like I ever bought or I ever owned, because it was like this and I think Fall Out Boy's Infinity on High and A Fever You Can't Sweat Out. Those are the first three CDs that I owned. And it's kind of weird that I didn't really keep going down the path after like MCR, because like around the time that I was like getting really into MCR, I also discovered pro wrestling. And of course, like 10-year-old me was like, no, we're gonna go with wrestling. We'll keep going down that path, and then like listen to like, in retrospect, like a ton of garbage music for like 3 or 4 years until like I got into Odd Future, and that set me down the path that I'm on now.
Hashtag relatable.
Odd Future was my gateway to indie music, guys. If there was no Odd Future, there would be no Indieheads podcast.
Seriously,
I say this like completely seriously. Like discovering Odd Future, discovering the Odd Future forums, and like getting into music from people posting there, like that's what got me here. So
100% Loiter Squad shaped my sense of humor, and I hate that. But anyways, we're derailing right now. This is not the Odd Future cast right now.
We are here to talk about the motherfucking Black Parade by motherfucking My Chemical Romance, and of course, this album, boy oh boy, this album, of course. I'm just gonna say this off the bat because this has been in my head. I think if we have any listeners, people who are still listening right now, who are not in MCR, and you're just kind of like maybe skeptical. So last year album of the year was Foxing's Near My God, and I feel like there's a lot similar with that album and this album in terms of like a rock band just being like, you know what, fuck it, we're gonna go for it. Like, we're gonna make this epic rock album, this epic like classic album, you know. And they have they're definitely different sounds of how they approach that, because of course like Foxing as a band at that time was in like 2018 and music trends and whatnot were very different. Whereas MCR, you know, they're in 2006 where, you know, rock and roll with guitars is still very, you know, vibrant when it comes to the alternative. It's like crazy how fast that changed. Like 2006, like My Chemical Romance, and then like not even like 4 or 5 years later, the sound of alternative had like started changing so much, where it basically
For
is
sure.
it's basic. I mean, right now you turn to an alt station, and if you're hearing like a new song, it's basically a song that could be on the pop stations, and sometimes it is on the pop stations. You know, like,
Well, and one thing that I was thinking about today, like when I was or maybe yesterday, I was re-listening to the Black Parade in like preparation for this, and I was just like, well, let me just go on the Wikipedia for the album, because I had not done that, I don't think, ever, because I just don't see why I would have had a reason to do it. And it was like, oh, you know, like this is a rock opera by emo band, My Chemical Romance or whatever, and I was like, emo, like it's just so crazy, like you know, like I've referred to it as emo, and I've referred to myself as an emo kid, but it's hard to believe that like My Chemical Romance and Panic at the Disco and Fall Out Boy were all considered like the emo trifecta when you think about it. Like they were just like they were such operatic performers. I would say all three of them, they were all very operatic performers, that I like just putting them into like this emo category is so hard to believe.
and in retrospect, it's definitely like when you consider the sound of like other emo music, it definitely feels kind of weird to consider those bands emo at times, at least like as they were in 2006. Like the sounds there, because for me, like I'll just say this, I think My Chemical Romance are pretty much like one of the last great like alternative rock bands, at least in terms of like how alt rock sounded, you know, like starting in like the 90s and whatnot, you know, from that kind of that era till, you know, before it kind of changed to a more pop oriented sound. Like they were pretty much like the last great alt rock band before things changed, you know.
Yeah,
like,
the My Chemical Romance, it's definitely they're definitely like a, you know, alt rock, emo, pop punk band or whatever. And here you know, absolutely zero pop punk. I'd say zero, not zero alt rock, but because that's what I'd classify it as. But it's just like all of the callbacks to like 1970s rock, like, you know, how we compare this to Bohemian Rhapsody. It's very like glam in comparison to all of their other albums, all of their other work. And that's what makes this stand out. That's why it's, you know, still one of their best albums. That's why everyone still talks about it.
Just on the side note, I completely agree with you, Corinne, but on a side note, I would also say that like the Black Parade is considered their rock opera, but I would say that it is not by itself, in the idea that like all of their albums are rock operas in a sense. It's just that we don't necessarily consider them all rock operas because they don't follow like this narrative structure. Whereas like the Black Parade does follow a narrative structure, but I think all of them have this glam punk kind of rock opera feel to them. I mean, Killjoys, obviously, that one's very conceptual and super conceptual. But I mean, Three Cheers and, you know, I Brought You My Book, like all of those are just, I think, rock operas as well. Just at such a mild, toned down version of it, like compared to the Black Parade.
I mean, Black Parade it's just their most laser focused effort in terms of like as a collective, I should say, because we'll kind of discuss Danger Days, their last record, probably a bit more towards the end of this podcast, and how this record kind of was. I mean, it's really. I mean, I think it's safe to say this is the, you know, their best album and their last great album. You know, as you know, the band once they wrapped up this album after like the tour, the band was very different, you know, in who they were. But let's stop talking around the record. Let's get into this thing. Let's get into the meat and the bones. Let's start off with the first track. We're gonna go track by track with this album, talk about our thoughts, our feelings, all that stuff. So let's start off with track number 1, The End. You know, a very you know, funny little title, starting right off with The End. And let's see. I'm gonna pull out. I got my lyric sheet right here from the from. So I've been listening to this a variety of different ways to prepare for this podcast. Partially through Spotify, and then partially through the Living with Ghosts reissue that came out back in 2016, which sounds great, by the way. If you don't own it, I would recommend picking it up if you like the album. I love the new cover art, and you get the Living with Ghosts stuff, which I've not dug into too much yet, which I think you have a little bit, Kasia, the B-sides and stuff that didn't make the record.
Right. Yeah, because I have the extended edition downloaded on Apple Music. So I definitely I didn't listen to it when I was younger because I didn't have the CD or anything like that. But I've listened to the deluxe version as an adult. Certainly not as in depth as some might have.
So I think Corinne, you posted this from Polyphonic, I think, the video they did.
Oh yeah, that one, it was basically just an explanation video of like how the album flows conceptually and how it all goes into like a storytelling type. And yeah, and then in that video I also found it in the recommended videos. Welcome to the Black Parade. Nope, sorry, just the Black Parade. I confused the titles. This was actually supposed to be their last album because Gerard Way didn't see them going past a third album at all because he had everything pre-planned pretty much, and I guess that's kind of where we see this being their last great album.
Yeah, okay, we need to stop. We'll get into Danger Days a little bit. We're focused on the Black Parade. The End. What a fucking way to start your album, by the way. Just like this great little acoustic guitar riff, and like Gerard just like the dramatics, they're 100% there. He's all in. And one thing I will probably be saying throughout as we're talking about all these tracks, god damn, man, I love rock and roll music with guitars. I fucking love rock and roll music with guitars. There's a lot of really great guitar work on this record, and that's very much because of Ray Toro. And there's nothing, again, not to shit talk Frank Iero, because he is, of course, a very good guitarist. But Ray Toro, man, like, he is, like, you know, very much...
Ray is the unsung hero of MCR.
I would agree. Unsung hero. His work without the band, especially on this album, is untouched, I would say. But yeah, this is a great way to start the album, and very much, you know, it shows you what you're in for the concept of the record, which, of course, if you don't know, basically the record revolves around the concept of this man in, like, his early 30s, dying of cancer, and he only has, you know, weeks left to live, and this is sort of, you know, kind of a peek into his mind, you know, and all the, you know, the ups and downs and tragedies, and, you know, it's not a straightforward narrative. It's very much kind of goes in and out of the timeline, you know, like it's not, you know, always clear, which does make this album, you know, when you talk about it as a concept album, a bit hard to discuss if you don't know like the full details of everything. So you can really kind of piece together, like I've been able to piece together most of this in my head somewhat, but you know, it very much kind of goes in and out of like, okay, this is a concept record about the story, but also very personal to Gerard Way and how, you know, how he was kind of reacting to the fame that the band got after 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge, you know.
And this is just another thing, like I would also add, and I'm gonna be like talking about this throughout the podcast,
no problem,
but just like and he hasn't explicitly said this, I don't think, anywhere, but he was having like a lot of troubles with addiction prior to I think he's been sober since 2007 as far as I'm aware, and so this album was recorded like late 2005, 2006, and so like you'll see like a lot of lyrics even like in the first song where it's just like, okay, this feels very much like struggling with addiction. Like with my own struggles with sobriety and stuff, I definitely see it in like just in the end. You'll see, like he says, if you look in the mirror and don't like what you see, you can find out firsthand what it's like to be me. Like there's so many meanings. There's so many meanings, but when I when I was listening to that recently, I was like, oh shit, this shit hurt. You know what I mean?
Big out.
Going back to you, Matty, but I just wanted to throw that in before we got like too deep into the song.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's not really much because it's a very short intro because it very much kind of, you know, it's sort of like an intro for the next track. But before we kind of move on to track number 2, this little bar right here, goddamn, Gerard Way, he's got some bars on this album. Let's just say that off the bat. Like
It's a whole banger, dude. This entire album,
it's
straight fucking bangs.
this okay. I want to say this bar did so much for queer kids back in the day. I'm gonna guess another contusion, my funeral jag. Here's my resignation. I'll serve it in drag. Like, oh, buddy.
Bars.
I love. I especially love like the little like kind of background vocals that happen when he says drag. Like, ah, man, that's just chef kisses. So good, so good. But like, I love the way the song builds and just like the way that kind of like comes to this like crescendo of like just it keeps building and building and building, and then you hear the flat line at the beginning of Dead, and you're like, oh fuck, like what are we in for? And then like just crazy guitar intro, like
rips
just
straight
fucking,
into it.
just a meaty nice riff from Ray Toro, like so good. And God, the like I said, this album in Gerard Way in general, very very dramatic, which is why I think it gets the emo tag more often than not, just because emo is very dramatic. Even when it's more low key, it's still very dramatic, like.
Right.
But this
Have
album,
you heard Never Meant?
exactly. White people be like,
This is coming from somebody with an American football tattoo, mind you.
God. But Dead is a really great track. It's very much like,
it's so good.
It ties very in with the concept of the album of just like, hey, like, oh shit, I'm gonna be dead in a couple weeks. Like, fuck this, like, no one, I know no one's gonna care about me. It's just sort of like, throughout the song, there's this very like kind of this mixed kind of vibe of like sort of a carefree attitude of like, okay, like, oh, I know that I only have a few weeks left to live. Like, who gives a fuck about all this? But still, like, you still give a fuck. Like, you give a fuck. I can hear it in your voice that you give a fuck about what people think about you. And like the chorus is, oh god, such a good chorus. Hey, have heard the news that you're dead. No one ever had much nice to say. God, Gerard Way, I mean, we'll talk about this again, obviously, throughout the album, but he's such a good vocalist, very much able to squeeze every bit of emotion out of his voice for these lyrics. And that can rub people the wrong way, because there's definitely some times where if someone would say that, like, oh, he kind of overdoes it sometimes, I'd be like, yeah, you're not wrong. He definitely kind of overdoes it. But, I mean, the Black Parade, this is a rock opera. Like,
you gotta go all out. Like, you
can't
have a rock opera without at least like screaming in some form or manner.
And there's some good Gerard yelling on this album. He goes hard on a couple of these tracks just for the yells and whatnot.
I'll say, I know that like we're not talking about Three Cheers, but like that is my favorite album, and so the Black Parade is like my second favorite.
Mm-hmm.
But it is interesting to see the different. Obviously, like they changed a lot in between those two albums, but in like the album before, it's just so much more hardcore, and then this one is so much more refined, and you can hear that in Dead, because it's just like you hear the switch over from the end into Dead, and it's just so flawless, so seamless. Whereas I don't think you get that in Three Cheers, which is it's just interesting to see the change.
Mm. I mean, I think it helps that, like, I mean, at that point, their stock within their label had obviously risen to the point where they could, afford better
get away
production.
With things.
Yeah, just have more time to craft the album, because I think Three Cheers, they did that relatively quickly. I think they put that together. Like, they had basically been like nonstop touring, had like enough time off that they could record the album, and then just went like straight back into touring after they finished the album. Whereas with this, like, you kind of feel like, okay, they had a time to kind of live and breathe this album in before, like, while they were working on it and whatnot. Like, sure. They really got to. I mean, reading the liner notes for the Living with Ghost edition of this album, I mean, they wrote 30 songs like as for this record. Like, then they end up like whittling it down to the 14 that we know now. And I mean, yeah, we will discuss as we kind of get more into the album. I will say this, of course, I love this album, one of my favorite albums of all time. It is one that I did get back into a little bit this year. I don't even know why. I just kind of was like, I'm going to listen to Mike Him again. I'm feeling nostalgic, and I was like, damn, they're really fucking good still. Like, they're a band that you would think, like, going back, you're like, oh man, they don't hold up, do they? And they really fucking do. Like, this album really does hold up, nowadays. I mean, I have not listened to A Fever You Can't Sweat Out of since, like, probably sometime in the 2010s.
It's still good. It's still good.
It's still very good.
Look, I will decide for myself. I'll decide for myself. But I get the sad feeling that, like, oh man, this album's not gonna hold up as much as I want it to hold up, you know, sadly. Whereas this, like, hey, it still holds up really goddamn well, you know.
I think, yeah, it's this one, and then like A Fever You Can't Sweat Out for Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, the first like what 2 albums, Infinity on
those are
High,
good.
yeah, first 3 albums, but the difference between My Chem and Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco is pretty stark because Panic, I mean, obviously it's just Brendan at this point, and it's like, okay, what the fuck, and then. And then also on top of that, like Fall Out Boy, like they both were just like, you know what, this is not us anymore. We're gonna go like really far into pop land. And that's totally fine if that's their direction, but it wasn't done well. Whereas My Chem was just like, we're gonna do one really crazy album, and I know we're not talking about Danger Days right now, but like they were like, we're gonna do that, and then we're gonna be done. Like we're gonna end it. Which I think is a really good way to go out. Like looking back, maybe that's why we
Danger
find
Days, that was their bang. That was their go out with a bang.
right.
Mhm.
And that might be just like one of the reasons. Obviously, The Black Parade is such a revered and amazing album, but one of the reasons why we might still have that opinion like so strongly because My Chem hasn't done anything super bad to make us like hate them yet.
Oh
You know
no,
what I
no,
mean?
no, no, no.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, they ended at a very like good time, you know, in terms of like because I mean here's the thing, like in between Danger Days and then like when they announced their breakup, like already like a ton of stuff had already changed within like the alt rock landscape, you know, or just like the alt landscape, you know, like if they wanted to kind of like be contenders or like still want to be like relevant within the scene, like they would have to make a major shift in their sound that I don't think that they would have been able to pull off, and I don't think they would want to because I mean let's be real, like Panic they sold out, Fall Out Boy they sold out, you know, like
If your song is in a Disney movie, you have sold out.
and there's
And
nothing wrong, I should say.
Oh
There's
yeah,
nothing,
no.
there's nothing wrong like personally with selling out, like hey, like you gotta get your money, you know, like you gotta get your money,
Get that check.
get that
bro.
check,
Yeah.
get that cheddar. But like in terms of like music stuff, it's like you were gonna like yeah, like it's very clear that like if this is you like honestly like expressing yourself musically, I think you should just stop. Like I would like Bryn and Yuri. If you didn't listen to the last podcast, I should make it very clear. I think Bryn and Yuri should stop.
You
Just
guys spent
stop.
40 minutes
Not-
talking
not-
about
Not just
why you
stop.
should stop.
Not just stop making music. Just
all
like
right,
stop
let's...
and. Anyways,
Wait, let's just say one last thing about Panic at the Disco, and then we'll just not talk about them for the
Yeah.
rest of the episode. And it's that Ryan Ross is the king, and
Oh my
Brendan
God.
Urie should stop.
Yeah.
God. Okay, let's get into track number 3 of this album. Of course, ends out. You know, then you know, why am I dead? Dead, and then boom, like, you know, just like suddening, like yes, awesome. And then of course, gets the you know, this is how I disappear. Just God, another meaty riff to start off the track, like that, just like that slow build, and then like Gerard like being like a revolutionary leader, being like go. And it's like oh shit, it's on. Like fuck. Like this album, like I said, it's full of bangers. Like there's some slow stuff on here, but like the first couple tracks on this album, like they fucking go hard. You know, like you would think like with the, with Welcome to the Black Parade that this was going to be maybe a bit more like I mean it's still going to be very dramatic, but sort of more kind of
Nuanced.
yeah, a little bit more nuanced. But like nah, it's very like I said, there's a lot of emphasis on the rock and the rock opera, you know, and. You know, this is how I disappear. Of course, you talked about again, kind of leading into this album, but like, I'm not sure if anyone watched the documentary that came out after the release of Three Cheers, like the tour documentary that kind of came out with the live album. I watched that.
When
not that long
I
ago.
watched it like when it came out.
Oh,
It's
we
on
know.
YouTube now. If I remember
very
to,
good.
I'll link it in the description on YouTube. But yeah, like while touring, you know, before the album came out and like after like. You know, very much was going through drug addiction and whatnot, and you know, and so it's not, you know, this track, you know, a little bit kind of, you know, you get the vibe of that, but I feel like, you know, it's a nice kind of like sort of flip of the book compared to Dead, where Dead is sort of this dramatic like, oh yeah, everyone thinks I'm dead, like awesome, great, and then like I'm happy, I don't care what these people think, and then this How It Disappears is obviously a much more kind of dramatic take on things, you know, of just being like. You know,
This is the realization.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna die and I'm just gonna disappear into the dark and no one's gonna care about me. You know, kind of. And God, I'm gonna pull up these lyrics, man. Just there's a fucking God.
It is just amazing how Gerard Way has written this entire album. I mean, it's not just him. Sorry, I should take that back. Not
I mean,
just
lyrically,
him,
I mean, lyrically, I'm pretty sure he wrote all the lyrics. You know,
he did. I mean, he did a good portion of it. I think Bob and Mikey definitely weighed in.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know about Ray or Frank. Frank for sure, because he's a big songwriter right now. But it is just so interesting how every song can be on its own without the album. Where I feel like you'll see a lot of concept albums, you're just like, you're in it and you have to listen to the whole thing because it's a concept album and you're taking it all in as one single entity. Whereas with the Black Parade, every song could be a single.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I actually never noticed that before, and now that I think about that, that's really amazing of them. Wow. Because being able to have every song handle a different topic and all of them explaining something about death and how you're dealing with life, that's difficult to do, especially for a band. Wow. We're already.
But I really love this song. I think like
it's so good.
Nobody cry. We're only on the third track.
I will. It's hard to pick a favorite from this album, but I would definitely say this is top 3 for me on the album. Like, this is a really great track, and I feel like the musical movements that it goes through, it's not just hard riffs. Like, there is like more slower sections where they kind of like where Gerard really kind of gets the flexes, like vocal muscles a little bit, and like really get into the dramatics, and the band's kind of able to kind of show a slightly different side of themselves. Like the bridge on here is just so good, where Gerard like really going a bit more into his higher register a little bit, like just really getting in that like just that pathetic feeling, like it's at times like a very pathetic song, and I mean like pathetic, and then like like the protagonist of the song is a very pathetic individual at time of like like, and without you, this is how I disappear. I'm just gonna go off alone. I'm gonna forever. You're never gonna see me again. Like
every goth kid in 2006 was just losing their mind over this song. They were just like sending those were their like AIM infos. It's just like the chorus to this song, like in Comic Sans bright pink font and
with like flame blingies going around it.
mm-hmm.
But seriously, this bridge, oh my god. And then I'm reading The Genius right now. Apparently this is about like somebody else conducting a seance in order to reach somebody, and just the bridge, having it like you can see it from 2 different perspectives. Like, can you hear me cry out to you? Oh,
mm-hmm.
It's over.
Genius. His mind, incredible.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm. Oh god.
But also, while like I'm also on The Genius right now, Corinne. But like, while you're the like, it shows like at the bottom, like one other person is viewing this. It's you and me. But my favorite. Hey. Every time I'm reading the lyrics and I know what it sounds like in my head, but the chorus, I'm just like, this is how you remind me of what I really.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you?
Gerard Way, if you're listening right now, I'm so sorry. But also, I love you. New Jersey representation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's get into the next track. Let's get into track number 4, The Sharpest Lives. I would say throughout the album, this is probably the most reminiscent of 3 Cheers. It very much feels like it could have fit on 3 Cheers pretty well. And there's a song on 3 Cheers that actually would have fit really well on this album, The Ghost of You, which I actually feel like is I would say maybe my favorite My Chem song is The Ghost of You. I would say I really love that song. Their best music video for sure. Also, I would say I fucking love that goddamn Saving Private Ryan ripoff shit. Like I live for it. I live for it. Again, they all have their hair slicked back too and stuff. Like, oh, amazing. But I mean, yeah, this very much is like a kind of a 3 Cheers type song, and
right.
it still fits within this album, but it still is like, I would say it's the most out of place in this album. It's still a good song, mind you, but it's definitely kind of
it's very hardcore. Like I feel like this is the one where there's like some super like very, very heavy riffs on here, and it's good, but yeah, like you said, it's very out of place.
Right. And like going back to like Three Cheers being my favorite one out of them, like when I listen to the song, I'm like, oh yeah, this goes so fucking hard. I'm in it right now. I'm in the motherfucking paint right now. But also, like, I recognize that it doesn't like fit perfectly into the album, but I would say like I really enjoy this one.
Oh,
Regardless of its place in the album, just because I love that hardcore vibe that they were going for with this one, and I really do love this song. I do. I I just feel like Gerard is really kind of going for it. You know, he goes through a lot of different vocal ranges. Maybe that's not the word, but he just I think
He uses
it
a
could
lot
be
a lot of different voices on this album. There's a
it
lot of
could
different
be-
characters that he inhabits throughout these
Sure.
songs.
I think what I mean is like this song could be very boring very easily, but he makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
like when you first hear him say, "Give me a shot to remember," fuck, like that's all I can say. Like the chorus, the first chorus, it just you hear that and you think, "God damn, okay, I'll keep listening."
God. I mean, yeah, this song, it's very much like, if we do talk about within the concept of the record, it definitely kind of feels like, it's kind of like a flashback, you know, of the patient, you know, and just sort of before he got his diagnosis, kind of was a reckless individual, you know, like kind of already on, you know, death's throes a couple of times, at least, you know, very willing to throw himself into death's throes. And it sort of serves as sort of a sharp kind of, you know, once we get to the track number 5, and probably the most famous track on this record, you know, the sort of the sharp detour of like back to the reality of the patient and where he's at currently. And of course, you know, track number 5, Welcome to the Black Parade. Folks, we're here. It is the Bohemian Rhapsody of our generation. And
For sure.
I think I agree with it to an extent, you know. It's not as weird as Bohemian Rhapsody, but I feel like that's why it works better, because you can take it a bit more seriously. Because Bohemian Rhapsody it's a joke song, like it's a total joke song at times, you know. Like I get why it's revered, and of course, like the Wayne's World scene is a fucking classic, and that's all. And that's all we needed when it comes to like a Queen biopic or whatever. That's all we need. We just need the Wayne's World scene of them singing Bohemian Rhapsody, and that's it. But for some reason, you know, we had the pedophile director is like, I gotta present my vision of Queen to the world, and it's like, all right, bro, no, we don't need that,
Did we
bro.
need it? No, but
We got it anyways. We got it. It's 37 cuts within like 30 seconds.
if
Like,
we're
it's
moving
fucking
on to
WWE.
if we're moving on to Welcome to the Black Parade, I just like okay, so yeah, it's like our Bohemian Rhapsody, whatever, and like you said, it's easy to take it a lot more seriously. But I've always wondered whether everyone like I don't know if you've noticed this, but I feel like maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, out of nowhere, everyone was just like, "Oh my God, do you guys remember Welcome to the Black Parade?" And there were so many memes about it, and I was like, did like a bunch of people get Berenstain Bears by this? Like, is that like thinking like they heard it so often? Because I just feel like for me it was like a super integral part of my adolescence, but then I'm like there's no way like every single person heard this song on the world. Like I just feel like it became such a cultural icon out of nowhere, like in the 2010s, like I would say maybe 2014 or 2015, and like all these memes started coming out about this song, which is well deserved because it is like a very memeable song and it's a good song. But I'm just like, how, like, and there's a star on it on Apple Music, and I'm just like, is that because it's always had the star on it, or because like there's it's
I mean,
constantly
it was the first single of the album. It was the lead single,
Sure.
and like very much set the tone. At least before the album came out, set the tone of like, this is what this record's going to be. The video, of course, it's an iconic video. Very much tells the story of the entire album in its, you know, short runtime and whatnot. And
Right, and it is the most operatic out of all the songs, I would say. I wouldn't say it's the best song on the album, but it is like I mean, I'm sure some people might, but I don't think it is the most operatic out of all of them. It's
But I will say it's the most representative of the album as a whole. You know,
Yeah,
it's safe
exactly.
to say.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's what I'm trying to say. Right. It is definitely like the Black Parade if you just put it into one song, which is why it was the lead single. I wouldn't say it's the best song, but
I would agree.
but I've just always wondered, like, has everyone been like has everyone had the experience of listening to this song? Because I always just like assumed not.
I
You
mean,
know?
it depends on the age of the people who are posting that stuff, but I feel like, I mean, like, nostalgia kind of kicks in. I mean, here's the thing, like, you know, I mean, when it comes to like Mike fans, we're a bit on the younger side of things, you know, like we're all, I mean, I'm 22, Corinne's 20. How old are you, Kasha?
21.
21. So
Yeah,
we're all in the, like, when it comes to like Mike fans, we're all on the kind of the younger side of things. So like,
it's like music that you grew up with, and I'd say the 2014 thing, like the whole big uprising, I'd say maybe that's just everybody finally, like the nostalgia's hitting them, like it's been years since the song came out or whatever, and a few people were spreading it around, and then everyone was like, oh shit, I regret not listening to this.
Okay, that's fair. I kind of went off on a tangent there, but it was just something I've been thinking about, like re-listening to the album and just being like, because I just like, am I crazy? But there's been a lot of memes about Welcome to the Black Parade, like just a crazy surgence of it. And I don't know if it's just like me interpreting it weirdly, but I don't know. I've seen it like all over the place, especially like the opening key notes.
Um, Jack's mashup of that with "We Are
So
Never
good.
Ever Getting Back Together."
So good.
It's the only song I've heard for the past 4 days. Please fucking help me.
And we'll link that down in the
we'll probably play it. We'll probably play it at the end of the episode. But let's
Yes.
get into the song itself. Like, god damn, this is a fucking. I mean, like I said, it's not my favorite on the album, but damn, it's a fucking like really killer song. The structure and everything. It's like it's really well crafted. It
best
might
5 minutes ever.
it might be their most well crafted song from a compositional standpoint. I would say in terms of the way that it builds and the of course the intro, of course, it's just sort of a lone piano, then the band slowly starts kind of coming in. You get some more drum work. You get like a little guitar stuff in there too that starts going. Ray Toro going off like a king, and just the way the song builds, and of course the story that it tells of this like very kind of this memory that that the patient has of his father, taking him to the parade, as he's kind of like starting to kind of enter the afterlife, or at least it's coming very soon to entering what is going to be his afterlife. For I think Gerard, I think he talked about everyone kind of sees the afterlife a little bit differently, and for the patient, the afterlife is this parade. Like this is one of his strongest memories growing up, and this is where he sees himself going. After he passes away. And God, I mean the song. I mean it really hits emotionally. The intro where Gerard is it's still very dramatic, but he downplays it just enough to the point where it's very real. Like you don't feel like that he's telling like a story. Like you feel like this is like a very genuine story about himself, and growing up as a kid and whatnot. And God, just
Yeah. The lyric that you're looking for to explain your feeling is "the anthem won't explain it." Like it's just this entire song, like it's the centerpiece of the album, I think. A lot of people will agree with me. But just like him going through like I feel like this song, it's the phase of acceptance, like that he's going to die himself, and like going between feeling insignificant and just being like, I don't know, I feel like somebody might remember me, and like the "will carry on" lyric just to end off the entire song, insane.
And of course, when the song really kicks in after the intro, like when everyone in the band kind of goes out, and then like, oh god, so good. Like I think we should say this compared to some of the other bands around at the time, My Chemical Romance, like they really could play. Like all those guys were like very good musicians. Compared to like I guess sort of some of the pop punk that was coming out at the time. Like is anyone gonna say, yo man, Sum 41, yo those dudes could really shred. Those dudes were so good. Or like even kind of Green Day to an extent. Like yeah, Green Day, man, they're so good. At least like pre-American Idiot, I don't think anyone would say that. I mean, American Idiot was like very much honing in their music, very much showing like, hey, like we have musical chops, guys. Like, come on, like we can pull out these 9-minute songs and be all right. And it's honestly kind of shocking to me that there's not a song on this album that goes over 6 minutes. Like the longest song on the album is this song, "Welcome to the Black Parade."
Yeah.
You know,
It's like 5 something minutes long. And
It's like 4 minutes long.
it's
not
five. It's
even-
5. It's 5:11.
5:11. Okay.
And yeah, God, I love this song. I mean, there's not much to say that hasn't already been said about the song. You know, like it's very hard to talk about now just because it's so popular. And just God, the way this again, I just love the arrangements so much. You know, I love the bridge where like the reverbed vocals are really coming in. The band is just kind of going off in the background, and Gerard is just like, you know, do
and
or
then the
die.
final bridge gang vocals come in, and oh my god.
I mean, it's a very
Insanity.
strong vocal performance from him. I mean, like every song that he has, he's very strong in his vocals, but this one is just so clear and crisp.
Mhm.
I don't know if those are the right words, but that's what I think of when I hear it. Like it's just, it feels so like very practiced,
Mhm.
very clean.
Like he really wanted to make this one just
Right.
I mean, and then the end of the like, kind of, I guess the bridge verses, you know, where he's just like, you know, I'm just a man. I'm not a hero. I'm just a boy, you know, who wants to sing this song, you know, and I'm just a man. And then being like, I don't care. Just it's so good and very representative of the album. Of like, I feel like this album, the band, they're not up their own asses, you know, like this album is. I mean, when you go out to make like a rock opera, it's very easy to find yourself like up your own ass when you're making it, but they don't. I don't feel like they ever get there on this album. It's very much, you know, like a very genuine, like heartfelt, you know, album statement throughout the record. You know, it's like I'm not a hero. I'm not, you know, I'm not a man. I'm just a boy who wants to, you know, make these songs and make these records. You know, and just like it's a very good sort of like, you know, kind of you know, thesis, you know, for the band itself in some ways. And, you know, God, we'll carry on, you know, the memory. God, I love the song so much. It's not my favorite on the album, I should say once again, but God, it is really the best thesis statement for this entire album, and really kind of where it doesn't exactly peak, you know, because I think there's better songs that come after this one. But, you know, in terms of the you know, the peak of the dramatics, you know, like it's like it's the album. It's sort of like the crescendo of like Act One, you know, of the album, and kind of, you know, in terms of like pure, you know, dramaticness, you know, pure, you know, I don't know. I can't figure out the words. It's very hard, you know. It's just that good. So, let's get into track number 6. If we're all ready to kind of, I think we've all said what we could say about this song, other than just
yeah.
oh God.
Track number 6, you mean I Don't Love You? You mean Yellow by Coldplay?
Oh my god.
Okay, no offense. I like this song is pretty good. I don't necessarily know if it needs to be on this album. I think it's a very good track. I just think that the album doesn't necessarily need it. I mean, it's a ballad, and you know, they try and grab you and just kind of pull you under. But I think a lot of their, you know, their harder core songs on the album do that just as much justice. You know, there doesn't need to necessarily be a ballad. But also, if you've never noticed, the intro chord progression for I Don't Love You and Yellow by Coldplay are the exact same chord progression. It is very funny to me, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, this is very much, I would say it's very much the Smiths / Morrissey song of the record in terms of the lyrics. I mean, here's the thing: like, this was a single in Britain. Like, this is for Britain. This was one of the singles on the album. You know, like this was originally like, only supposed to be for Britain as a single, and it's very clear why, because it's very much like, it doesn't, you know, sound exactly like the Smiths or Morrissey, but it very much like comes from the kind of the same place, like lyrically and, you know, kind of musically to an extent, you know, of like this sort of like more, you know, self-contained kind of, you know, more of a Brit pop vibe. I mean, and especially after, you know, it's definitely a bit of a palate cleanser after Welcome to the Black Parade. It's sort of like, it's still kind of a dramatic song, but it kind of is a bit more like, okay, it's not as heavy, you know, it's just kind of like a kind of like a more of a standard like kind of breakup track, you know.
Right. That's what I've always gleaned from it. Like it was just like the breakup track. But I mean, it has its place. My personal opinion, I just think it's not necessarily integral to the album. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I would
the
agree.
album wouldn't be worse off without it.
I would agree. I think like I get why it's on the album, you know. But at the same time, you know, it's very much like if we talk about the song as like a concept record, it's very much kind of like a flashback song, you know, prior to the patient's, you know, their diagnosis, you know. But at the same time, yeah, it kind of narratively, it's hard to kind of figure out how it fits within the album. I think it's a nice song, you know, like I don't hate it, but it's very much like, hey, we're just gonna make, you know, like, hey, we want to make a Smith song, and it's like, all right, you know, all right, Gerard, go on ahead, buddy, go on ahead, we love you, go ahead, buddy, we love you, go ahead, do it.
Yeah, putting it after Welcome to the Black Parade is a little weird. In a way, it's just kind of.
It makes sense for the pacing. It makes sense for the pacing of the album, I would say.
Oh yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, as a track, like I'd say, I definitely forgot about this one. It's great. I love it, and the lyrics, I don't love you like I loved you yesterday. It's just like this song. It just doesn't hurt as much as all the other ones do.
No, I never. I mean, even whenever I used to listen to My Chemical all the time as a kid, it never quite hit me that way. It never was like.
Yeah.
It's very, like I said, it's kind of a boilerplate kind of like breakup song, you know. There's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely just does kind of, you know, stick out like a sore thumb, you know, throughout the rest of the album.
I have to imagine though, is that just like listening to the whole album, it like you said, it does kind of stick out a little bit, and I just like have to imagine that like they went to their record company and they were like, okay, this is our album, and they were like, oh, but you need something in there to like as a palate cleanser. Like you can't just keep doing like intense guitar riffs in every song or like operatic overtures, you know. And so like they were just like, oh, okay, well let's just throw this one in here, we have this like on the back burner, so
yeah, it's like, oh, we'll give it to the Brits, you know, they'll like it, you know, whatever.
Yeah, but then like you said, using this song as a palate cleanser, that makes a lot of sense in, I'd say, where they put it.
I guess yeah, we'll just get into the next track, House of Wolves, which by the way, fucking there's a lot of really killer intros on this album when it comes to, like the intros of these songs, and like this is a really killer intro with the, you know, the drum beat, and then, you know, the guitar, the really distorted guitar where he's just like fucking like just you know, it very much reminds me of when I saw Girl Band a couple of years ago at Pitchfork Fest, where like the bassist was like playing his bass with like a mason jar, you know.
What the fuck?
If you find the live video, some of the live videos, you'll see how he does it. But just like that kind of like distorted, like I'm just kind of like just putting something over all these guitar strings, you know, like this sort of like weird kind of, you know, unhuman sound, you know. And
oh yeah, Ed Sheeran did that with his repeating pedal in 2011.
God, shut up. No.
I'm sorry. I'm kidding.
No more.
We don't talk about Ed Sheeran's pedals. We talk about Julian Baker's pedals. Know your place.
I had to sneak that in so that Matty would slap me through the Skype call.
I literally, like I said, I told Jeremiah that like if Thinking Out Loud is like like if you guys get married one day and that's like your first dance song, like I'm gonna dump all the wine at the wedding. I'm gonna dump the wine. I'm gonna fuck up the cake. Like,
damn, Matty, who said you were invited?
Oh shit.
No, I'm just kidding. You're our flower boy.
Yay! I love that. I love that for me. House of Wolves. House of Wolves. All right, folks. This is again. It's very much kind of like a
good track.
It's a good song. It's like a Greaser song.
Right.
Oh hell yeah.
It's like Gerard on like his Greaser shit. You know.
Gerard said, "Stay gold, pony boy." And
God, I don't know how much you guys have got like found out like rockabilly YouTubers or whatever. Like people who are just like obsessed with the 50s.
Okay, hold up. I actually that was me in like middle school for absolutely no fucking reason whatsoever. I own like 2 or 3 pinup girl dresses, and don't talk to me when it comes to rockabilly shit. We literally have punk rock bowling going on like miles away from me right now.
Do you have a switchblade, Corinne?
No, it got confiscated by TSA because I accidentally left it in my. But I have a bunch of knives, and there's a switchblade tattoo on the inside of my thigh. So
Okay, I was gonna be like, I'm like, I feel like you're the
You
type
did it for the
who
culture.
has owned a Switchblade at some point or owns one
Oh
right
yes. And I feel like I don't know that qualifies me enough to talk about this song, but I was listening to this earlier, and its place in the album is absolutely perfect. But I don't know. It's just like I don't have a lot to say about it, but it's like the outro. Tell me I'm a bad man. Just oh my fucking god. This is like peak acceptance right here. It's like okay, I'm done accepting. Please just kill me, take me into hell or whatever. Like.
But also, it's kind of sexy.
Yeah.
not to be that person, but this song is kind of sexy. Like I'm listening and I'm just like, oh, Gerard's like, okay, call me. You know, here's my number.
I feel like if they like made this album like an actual musical, like this would be like this like section would go the fuck off. I think like choreography. I'm just imagining some great choreography. You know, like oh man, like this is gonna hit. You know, like I just imagine like Gerard in like a leather jacket, slick back hair.
They're all snapping their fingers.
Tell me I'm
Hold
a
up.
bad
House of Wolves,
man.
My Chemical Romance's like sweet transvestite. Like this motherfucker just comes in and you go, okay, please step on me. It's so underrated. Yes, I agree with the person that commented this 3 years ago. Fuck. It is sexy.
It is sexy. That's the takeaway for this track. Is just like really sexy.
Gerard Way fucks. He fucks.
Yeah, Gerard Way fucks on this song.
Oh my god.
I want Gerard Way to bust my back door. I want Gerard Way to bust my back doors open like it's like it's goddamn New York, New Jersey brothers. Okay, let's get
Bad
into,
joke, Matt. Don't want to make it.
now for a complete 180 in terms of tone. Let's get into Cancer, which I'm gonna say it. This is
Not
my
sexy.
This is my favorite. I'm trying to get serious. All right, this is a serious song, Corinne.
I'm sorry.
It's about cancer because it's called Cancer. Did you know that it's about cancer, Corinne?
CANCR. Cancer.
Corinne, listen, I understand how it could go over your head because when I saw it, I was like, this can't possibly be about cancer. But then I read the title and I was like, oh, it's about cancer. So I get it.
It's Gerard Way. Is Gerard Way a cancer?
What's
That's a really good question.
What's Gerard Way's astrological
Way.
sign? We gotta figure
Gerard
this.
Way astrology.
Dude, whatever Gerard Way's astrological sign completely
Gerard Way's
determines
an
whether
Aries.
he will top me and Jeremiah.
Aries.
Classic. I respect it. I
Sun
respect him as an
Aries,
Aries.
Moon Capricorn.
Oh, Gerard Way is 5'6". Oh, short King Gerard Way up in here. All right.
Short King.
Gerard, my phone number is 862.
No.
I'm just...
God. Oh, God.
Anyways, Cancer.
Cancer. This is again my favorite song on the album. I'd say. I think it's obviously like at the time I would say it was one of the sharpest detours they had made musically. Like it very much did not sound like a lot of the stuff they've been making previously. It's more of like more of a kind of a more piano ballad based song, and it really works because I feel like it's just dramatic enough that you can get invested, but not too dramatic where you're just like it's so over the top. It is over the top to an extent, but you kind of at this point like you buy into the world of the album, like the world that this album is built, and so you're like, all right, I'm in for it. Like this is kind of things are a little exaggerated, like. Duh. But I mean I really love the song. I feel like the vocals and whatnot, like he does kind of add a bit more nuance to his vocals, and just God, I really love this song so much, and even though it's kind of like tragedy valor stealing, it's still really good. Like and it's also I
love that it acts as an interlude.
Oh yeah. And
I love that there's no explicit interludes in this album. Like, every song has a purpose, but yes. I feel like this as an interlude works so well because it's just so direct.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a lyric on here. I feel like that's very kind of representative of like the dramatics of the album overall. You know, it's like, you know, oh my agony, know that I will never marry, baby. I'm just soggy from the chemo, but counting down the days to go. You know, of just kind of that's kind of what passes off the more dramatic stuff, which is like I'm just soggy from the chemo. Okay, like I have to escape this somehow. And sometimes I might lash out. And it's like, yeah, you're fucking dying, man, of course.
That's the best way I've heard anybody describe this track at all. And yeah, like it just ain't living, and I just hope like it's it's direct, it's short and sweet, and this is kind of, I'd say, like one of the major cutoffs of the album because it goes straight into Mama and you're like, oh my God.
Oh God, Mama's so good. But that's next track. Let's talk about that later. But yes, no, I mean, like, just that whole verse right there, now turn away because I'm awful just to see. Oh, that hits you right in the fucking gut, bro. That shit hurted so bad. But yes, no, it's so short. It's so, not to say short and sweet, but it is so just short, direct, perfect. It doesn't need to be longer than it is. It is the perfect interlude between House of Wolves and Mama. Like, two very kind of just intense, very I don't want to say show tunesy, but just very
I know what you mean by that.
Right, like there's a purpose for the songs, and they are just living it up.
It's
in,
like
in
it's
House
like
of Wolves and Mama.
It's like the ideal kind of like glam metal. All right, let's take it back. Let's do a power ballad for the people. Even though it's not really a power ballad. It's like a very like depressing song, and I love the kind of the refrain of like, because the hardest part of this is leaving you. Like that fucking hits like a fucking train. Like
it sticks with you.
I listen to like I will run. I remember when I was listening to this like earlier this year, which is why I ended up like going to do this podcast. I would just run this track back. Like I just put it on repeat. My girlfriend's like, "Are you okay?" And it's like, no. I'm fine.
Absolutely not.
I'm fine. Shut up.
I made a tweet today about, I was like, I wish there was an app that would connect my therapist to me every time it saw me listening to the Front Bottoms, and like that should go for this album as well. Just like
if
every
you make
time...
it 8 tracks in, call my therapist.
Like we should have an emergency meeting.
A hotline for people that are listening to the Black Parade again.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
So I guess we'll get into Mama. I feel like Mama, like, sort of like the end of Cancer is just sort of like him, like, kind of not really fading away. Like, he's not like dead just yet, but like fading away, like going into kind of like a dream state, because Mama very much feels like it's a fucking nightmare. Like, the song is like a kooky funhouse nightmare.
Mama is definitely one of my favorite songs on the album. It is not my favorite, but it is one of my favorite songs because it is just so operatic. I've said operatic probably like 40 times on this cast so far, but this one I think is the most operatic out of all the songs. I know people say Welcome to the Black Parade is, but I think Mama, like, because every single verse is like an overture. Like it's like a whole different song you're entering in every single verse. Because it's never the same. It's, how long is it? Like almost 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it's just like every minute you're entering a different world with them. And yeah, it's definitely one of my tops. It's just so fucking good, dude. Like, Mama is so fucking good. And I'm surprised, I don't think it has a star on Apple Music, which I don't know how Apple Music decides to give stars to things. I don't know if it's just like their top 2 out of all of them, but
maybe it's the most listened tracks.
And apparently Liza Minnelli is on it.
Yes, this is we discovered before we started recording. I'm reading the liner notes, and yeah, Liza Minnelli is the mother on this track, the one who's like, and if you would call me your sweetheart, and of course I'm just reminded of her part of like on Arrested Development, like her like singing this to like Buster.
Probably the part that sticks with me most, maybe, out of this song is just when when he's talking about, like, he's like, oh, I should have. Oh yeah, you should have raised a baby girl. I should have been a better son. Like the way he says that, the intonation of that lyric just fucks me up. Like the rest of the song is over for me. Like
when I mention this song, it's like a Nightmare Funhouse, you know. And it's like that. That's like the lyric that I'm talking about in terms of just being like, you know, this sort of like this like circus leader, you know, just being like, I could have been a better son. Like, I'm just imagining Chavo Trap House's Sebastian Gorka impression. I'm just imagining him singing this song now, and I'm having a good laugh in my head about it. Has anyone seen that?
I wish I could. No, I wish I could understand, baby,
God.
but
I'm Sebastian Gorka. Anyways, this is a great song. This is a really great song, and I feel like is a very kind of it's a good tonal shift from Cancer, because I feel like Cancer is a very heavy song, and this is sort of it's still very tonally the same, but it's a lot more kooky and it's a lot more kind of fun, but still, you know, doesn't like take away from like some of the heavy themes on this album. You know, like it very much ties in with the rest of the record very well in terms of just like, you know, having these regrets about life, and you know, I know when I die or when I get close to death, you know, like my parents are gonna be like, it's a very like bad thing, like, oh man, you know, or when my parents, you know, they, you know, once they kind of sadly get up there, you know, my own reflections about this, you know, but you know, mama, we all go to hell, okay? Sometimes it
Yes.
truly sometimes, you know, the mid be hitting, you know. And I also love the screams at the end of the song, like when Gerard's just like, ah, it's like I feel you, King, I feel you. I feel you so hard.
This song feels like every Christmas when my brother says he's not going to church, and then like my parents and him get into an argument for like an hour and a half.
Christmas 2006 doesn't get better than this, ladies. This song, it's just like, it's so dark, and I'd say like the realization of the narrator and just going, ah, fuck, okay. That's what makes
very much is like it's like I imagine like Gerard Way being like a kid and be like, Mom said that I could use the Xbox.
I'm just now recognizing, thanks to this Genius page, that both Frank Iero and Mikey and Gerard's mom are on this track.
Wait, what?
This is additional vocals.
I didn't mention
Linda
that.
Iero and Donna Leeway.
New Jersey Queens.
New Jersey Queens. Hashtag Newark representation.
God.
Listen, the best thing to ever happen to New Jersey, I mean, aside from Jersey Shore, is My Chemical Romance. If anybody in My Chemical Romance heard this episode and heard me just say that My Chem was after Jersey Shore, they would probably kill me. But they're both cultural icons, and I stan.
God. Shit. I guess we'll get into again the next track, which I feel like is I would say
my favorite song on the album. Yes,
it's top 3 for me. I feel like one kind of bit of history about the band that we didn't really brush upon just yet was sort of how the band came to be. You know, like what ended up like starting the band. Like basically, I think Gerard Way, he was on the ferry to New York because he was working as an artist at the time for. I don't know who was it, like Cartoon Network or something like that.
Hold up, what the hell?
I'm not sure, but I know that he saw the Twin Towers fall down.
Basically, yes. Yeah, it's like.
And then he was talking with the who would become the drummer for the first album, but not the second, I don't think.
Mm-hmm.
Either the first and second, but I know Bob Breyer replaced him.
Yeah.
And they were like, just trying to deal with that, and created My Chemical Romance out of that.
Yes.
Which, like, I get it. Like, anybody who was in the tri-state area or, like, in DC area at the time has, like, a very specific memory of it. And this is just a little bit off track, but, like, me and Jared have talked about it extensively, that, like, the cutoff for millennials is whether you have a very distinct memory of 9/11 or not.
Okay. Sorry, I was gonna say I'm reading a bit more into the history of the band. Like, yeah, like he was working as an intern for Cartoon Network in New York City. He was living in Jersey, so he took the ferry, and then like witnessed 9/11, and then that could have caused the creation of the band, and then wrote their first song like pretty shortly afterwards, which was a
Yeah, that literally became Skylines and
Yep,
Turnstiles because
exactly.
that's where he was at. And
Exactly.
yeah, like you said, the whole like flashbulb memory of 9/11, especially with everybody in New York, like literally like Interpol's first entire album is just like post 9/11. That's the feeling that New York had, and for My Chemical Romance to bring that into kind of like a more like raging thing, like I don't know if I want to say this, but literally My Chemical Romance could not save the World Trade Center, but they were able to save me, and that is the entire point of My Chemical Romance.
God.
Fuck you.
Well, somebody had to fucking do it.
And Gerard Way
do
did,
it.
man.
Gerard Way, and let's not downplay Mikey, Ray. Like they all fucking went in on this, but it's there's something so integral about rage in a situation like that. Like there's so many albums and things that were inspired by the pain that happened after 9/11, but there's just something so important about being angry and not trying to hide that anger.
Mm.
And MCR, like they fucking did that.
Yeah.
Capital T.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of mention the whole origins of the band and 9/11 and whatnot, because I feel like the intro to this song was sort of the distorted kind of like it's like a taped interview. I think if I remember correctly, sort of it's basically like they basically recorded this album in like a castle, pretty much, like
A haunted castle.
It was like a haunted.
It was like a haunted mansion, pretty much. They recorded
Right.
this album in, and basically him describing kind of like a night of him like trying to sleep and like having like these terrors, and it feels very reminiscent of like like a 911 phone call, of like someone in the World Trade Center. Like that's kind of the vibes that I get, from this song, at least from the intro.
I'm gonna go completely left field here, and at the beginning I mentioned like the whole addiction thing, like where you can kind of feel like his struggle with addiction throughout the lyrics in this album, whether they're explicit or not. But I feel like Sleep, for me, and it's also my favorite track on the album, but it's also just so intensely it's like it has that feeling of like trying to deal with the fact that you are addicted to something and no one else is gonna understand because you're the bad person and they're still upset over it for you. I've listened to this so many times, but the lyrics where he's just like, a drink for the horror that I'm in, for the good guys and the bad guys, for the monsters that I've been. 3 cheers for tyranny, unapologetic apathy, because there ain't no way that I'm coming back again. Like, that is so just like, oh God, like fucking struggling with sobriety, like that is it. And then the pre-chorus right after it, like, how could you cry for me? Just thinking about like dealing with your family and all these people who love you and want to see like the best for you. Like that's what has always come through for me with this song, at least in my like post-adolescence, like as an adult. That's what I felt. I don't know if I ever had any strong feelings towards this as like a kid. But God, this song fucking hits so hard. So goddamn hard. And I don't mean to like overtake this track here.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
No.
Like, go ahead. Go off, Queen.
It is so good. Like, I would say this is the best track on the album.
Like I said, yeah, it's top.
I agree.
I feel like it's a very important track within the album. It's very much kind of like I said, we're in the final stretch of the album, and this very much is like, all right, like we can't let go of this concept just yet. And like Sleep is a very good sort of kind of mix of very much of like of the reality of like Gerard Way's life at the time, but also again tying that into the concept of the record and whatnot of the patient, and God, it's just it is really such a good song, I especially love like I guess the first chorus, or like the second part of it's like we're just sleep, the hardest part of letting go is your dreams, and it's like just fucking hits, just hits like a ton of goddamn bricks, but yeah, it's obviously like, I mean, obviously I mentioned It was a very dramatic album, but I feel like, I also love the callback to the Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, where he's like, for 3 cheers for tyranny. It's like, I love the little callbacks like that, man. Like,
We love a consistent king.
God.
Okay, I was trying to find the lyric. The hardest part of this is leaving you, and then they call back to it, and it's just, oh, like the hardest parts, the awful things that I've seen, and then just like, all of this like self-reflection, this, like we've said, this album, it's very self-aware. It's the most self-aware album, I would say, and then this song, it's good. It hurts. And then Sleep, it could be taken two ways. Like for the people who are mourning, they need to sleep on this and think about their feelings. But then, like the sleep of obviously someone is dying.
It's a very reflective song. Like it's very much a sort of like the patient kind of taking a step back and kind of, like it's in the stages of grief, it's acceptance, of like, a drink, for the horror that I'm in, for the good guys and the bad guys, for the monsters that I've been, it's just that's such a good lyric, It's so fucking good.
Such a good lyric. And yeah, like, so I talked about the addiction aspect of it, but in the concept, the conceptual version of it is so good, just because, like, if you think about it, like, if you died, like, right now, think about just
everything,
all the guilt that is probably building up, and like I mean, I've never been in a situation like this and where like I've been overcome with illness, but the idea that you're just like there and you have so many people around you who are like expecting something of you, whether not expecting something of you, I don't know if that's necessarily the right word, but they're there and you have to say something, and you're just like, I can only imagine the guilt that is like in you. And this song is so exemplary of so many feelings that you would feel through so many different things, and it is so creepy. It is so underlyingly creepy, and I just love it. I love everything about this song. This is my favorite song on the album, and
yeah,
so good.
Definitely, it's very creepy. I mean, like, they recorded it in a mansion, and this is like him recalling all of, like, the spook shit going on. But like, and then the very end, like the repetitive, like, just sleep, and then wake up, like maybe, like maybe I don't want to die, it's still kind of there, and then I can't ever wake up.
Those bitches got me with that one.
I know, and I can't ever wake up. Fuck my life.
All right, let's another track. We had to mention songs that maybe don't fit. We mentioned one with I Don't Love You, and Teenagers is kind of one of the songs where it doesn't.
It's so out of place.
It's kind of out of place. Like after Sleep, it definitely feels weirdly out of place.
If you read the Genius sidebar, it is like so reaching. It's like the singer reminisces about his teenage years, and it's like, okay, like that's a reach. Like it is out of place. I can see like how you can jump to that, but it's just a single. It's just a good single.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's very much a single. It's very much like, oh shit, we need a single for the label. Let's just start it on the album. And I feel like this album, it like I feel like if they made this album now, the track listing would be a lot different. Like a song like Teenagers and a song like I Don't Love You, like they would be bonus tracks at best. Like they would not be on the album. I don't think. It very much is. Like this is how major labels operated. In the mid 2000s. It's like, all right, like you get to have your kooky, stupid little concept album about cancer and stuff, but you got to give us some singles. All right, it's like we'll let you release Welcome to My Parade, but it's like we'll give you one, and then you give us one, and that's kind of what Teenagers is. And here's the thing: it's a fun song. It's fucking catchy as hell. Like I want to hate this song so much, but I can't. Like literally, as soon as it comes on, I'm singing along to it. It's just like, motherfucker, stupid single.
Oh, fighting.
Like
there's a this is completely off track, but there's a sidebar on the Genius page that says, "Why do some adults think like this?" Like it's posed like a Yahoo Answers. Why do some adults think like this? I don't know.
Look,
turn 20
look,
and
all
they'll
right.
understand.
Look,
It's
teenagers,
true.
you know, they really do be scaring the shit out of me sometimes. All right,
It's true.
all right.
Exactly. What's that John Mulaney skit where he's like a 13-year-old can zone in on every single aspect I hate about myself from across the street or whatever? Like,
Oh
absolutely.
my god. Ugh.
But yeah, it's just a good song. It's just a good single. They were just like they had the like exactly like I Don't Love You. It was on the back burner. They had it. It didn't really fit in, but this is just how I imagine it. I don't know, but they just kind of throw it in. It's a really good single. Everybody loves it. Anybody, I think anybody in this day and age, like if you were just like teenagers scared the living shit out of me, they would recognize it to an extent. But
Mhm.
it's just a good song. I don't know.
It's a bop. It's a bop. I don't know if I'd say anything else about it. It's really repetitive, because like it's like half of the song is straight chorus, but
Yeah.
it's good. I love it, and if you were to watch me driving on like to work one day, you definitely hear like at least like the bass in like my car vibrating because of this song.
Like it's a good, like, I mean, like I said, it's I mean, this album very much structured like a classic rock album, you know, like,
Yeah.
and this is a very like this is like a tribute to like classic rock. Like this very much feels like their take on things, you know, with the guitar riff and like the subject matter, you know, like it feels like you throw something like a classic rock playlist. I don't think anyone's gonna bat like too serious of an eye, you know, of like, it's a school's out for the summer, you know, like it's that type of shit, you know. God. Yeah. Let's. I guess we'll get the next track. Disenchanted, which as we mentioned with I Don't Love You, they're on their Smith shit. This like at the beginning at least, really on their Smith shit with that acoustic guitar, brother. Ooh, you know.
I think it definitely fits better than I Don't Love
Oh,
You.
for sure. It's definitely thematically much more poignant. You know.
It feels like, he's like there and he's thinking about this memory and going through it. Whereas I Don't Love You, it's just kind of like, I Don't Love You is so much of a breakup song that I can't see it as not a breakup song. You know what I mean?
It's
like
kind of
you hear it the
it's
first
more
time.
of like a breakup song, but within like the context of the album of like, I'm not like, I don't want to break up with you, but like I'm dying and this has to happen, you know? Like,
Whereas Disenchanted, I'm like, I feel like we're just going through this memory with him and like feeling this with him. Like, similarly to I Don't Love You, I don't think it necessarily needs to be on the album, but maybe that's just me and my like opposition to ballads. But I think it works much better than I Don't Love You.
yeah, I would agree. Very much agree. I mean, despite this being like one of the longest songs in the album, it's kind of the one, because it's so late in the album, it's kind of the one that I remember the least. And because it's not really like a straight, it's
I
not
feel
really,
that.
it doesn't really have like super strong like kind of like pop songwriting, you know. It's very much kind of like it's a mood builder. Like you're not really supposed to remember the song necessarily. It's just like the mood that it gives you, you know. So, like I said, I don't have much to say. Like it fits in, like it does like play nicely with teenagers, just because they're both kind of about the same thing in terms of like, you know, where teenagers about, you know, kind of being in high school and all the, you know, stupid teenagers, and then, you know, like this song kind of like more of a, you know, a more, you know, not as, you know, dramatic classic rocky, you know. It's kind of it's a ballad, you know. It's when the band, you know, they unplug some of the amps and they just, you know, light a candle or two, get those lighters up in the airs, folks. This is that good shit.
Get your Wikipedia page of a lighter out.
Get your razor phones out, folks.
Oh God!
Oh my God.
I wish I was popular and rich enough for a razor.
God, I was not.
Were you, Matty?
I was not. I think my sisters had razors, but I never got to have one.
I thought you said I was that, and I was
My
like,
dad had
oh, flaunting your riches. Okay.
No, I don't remember I know that I didn't have like a flip phone for my first cell phone. I had one that had like a keyboard that you could pop out.
Oh, hell yeah.
I had the LG G2 or whatever.
Mine was a Samsung.
Let me see if what it was. It might have been a Samsung. It might have been LG. I'm gonna look up. I can't remember for the life of me, like what It was. No, the thing is, I know it was never. No, I never had the touchscreen phone was not my first cell phone. It was one of the ones with the pop-out keyboard. It was before touchscreen. I think it had it had a touchscreen, but it was a very basic touchscreen. You know, like
Yeah.
it was. It's like it had like it double popped out. Like it popped out like a number thing, and then it popped out like the keyboard. You know, like I'd have.
Maybe you're thinking of the chocolate, but the LG chocolate. My first phone was a flip phone, but I remember I had a flip phone and my friend had the Sony Ericsson. I don't know if you remember it. It was a slidey phone. It was only available to T-Mobile, so I didn't get it because T-Mobile did not work in my area. But it had like it would light up in neon colors around the edges of it, and it was like the coolest fucking phone in the world. I was so obsessed.
God. Hang on. Okay, now that we're talking about this, I really have to like figure out what cell phone I had as a kid before I got like an iPhone. Finally, God, I'm gonna look through this BuzzFeed list real quick.
Oh no.
God, Matty.
I mean, there's not really much else to say about the song, honestly. Like, it fits in well with the album.
It fits next to teenagers.
It hits the right emotional beats. You know, like it works. You know. Pretty well. So yeah, I guess. Fuck, here we are, the final track of the album, and
except for the hidden track.
The hidden track, of course. But this one, you know, I said that Cancer is my favorite song. You know what? I lied. It's this song. This is the best song on the album.
Is it because of the way Gerard says, "But where's your heart?"
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Exactly. Actually.
It's so good.
God.
It's a very good way to end.
Yeah. This is again like I fully stand by this, like one of the best outros of all time. You know, like this is like what a fucking way to end your album. You know, like these like. I mean, we kind of stopped talking about the band playing as much on this album as we kind of kept talking about the record, but, like, the band is just going the fuck in on this song, you know? Like, the guitars just sound amazing, and they just hit the right dramatic beats, and, of course, Gerard, you know, peak, like, dramatic of, like, it's sort of, you know, one last hurrah before death grabs him, you know? Of, like, you think he's accepted it, and it's like, no, bitch, I lied. Not really. He's accepted it, but he's not afraid anymore. It's very much like he's not as down in the dumps about it. He's like, you're not, you know, I'm not afraid, like, or whatever. I don't know. This is a really fucking good song.
Oh, so it's more like surprise, bitch. You thought you'd seen the last of me.
Yes. Okay, that worked. That's better. That's a better way to say it.
For sure.
God. Again, like I said, we talked about some of the arrangements on this album. This track is such a good arrangement throughout the way the verses build and kind of the differences between. And of course, the intro, of course, is very simple kind of guitar riff. It's like it's like, God, just it hits so beautifully.
Have you guys seen the video?
Yes, the video is great.
God, he's so sexy. Like, I'm sorry, I had an entire beer since we started this cast.
God.
But literally everyone in this video just, like, is peak 2006 sexiness. Like, it is such a good video. But anyways, back to the actual song and the actual content of the album.
Like I love the let's see the second verse where it's like, you know, so many bright lights that cast a shadow. Just again, one of the best parts of this album is just the way that Gerard has such a control on his voice and sort of his flow of how he sings. You know, like where he hits all these like emotional beats like so perfectly. You know, of like just the perfect level of dramaticness. You know, of like. It's just like go off, King, go off, like just throughout this album. And this song really is like, yeah, that again, one that I play on repeat like all the time. It's just that good. And of course, great music video, like very. I mean, I think it's directed by the same guy who did Smells Like Teen Spirit, and of course, there's a lot of, you know, similarities there. You know, of Smells Like Teen Spirit in this video of like, you know, the parade is shut down. You know, it's the float has been destroyed. And the band, there is just one last hurrah before they ride out into the sun, you know. And of course, another fun fact for this music video: Bob Ryer, of course, the drummer at the time, like got like pretty severe burns on his legs while making this video. Like as they're
What?
yeah, like he had I think they had to like
Owie.
I think they had to either like reschedule or cancel a couple tour dates because, or like he had to like drop off a couple tour dates because he had to recover from like getting like second or like third degree burns on his legs because like he was the one that was like
the fire in
like-
the video. Yeah.
like,
That
he-
shit hurted.
like-
Wow.
like he was like the closest to the fire in the video, you know, and like
Yeah.
and that, I think it's a good representation of Mike Kim of like
The fire's like coming out like from behind him. Like it
That's
is
so
absolutely
funny.
bonkers.
So sorry.
Mhm. I mean that's the thing with this, you know, it's just like these guys were very like dedicated to their art, you know, like as a band, as a collective, they are very dedicated to this album. They're very dedicated to the aesthetics, and you know, you could very much tell that like I mean just the way that Gerard, you know, puts himself in his performances, like he's willing to fucking die for this shit, you know, like he would fucking die for this band and he would die for the music, you know, if
And that's what it's all about,
that's
baby.
what it's all about. And
I'm
that's
still watching the music video, and I'm just like, go off, King.
God.
Yeah.
And I mean, I mentioned earlier in this podcast, like how they were like the, you know, the last great alt rock band, because up until, you know, I feel like alt rock music, you know, we got concept albums, you know, like I mean, like bands that kind of were inspired by My Kim and you know how they dealt with concepts, but they just didn't really go for it the way that My Kim does. I mean, obviously, I think like a modern comparison would be like Blurry Face by 21 Pilots. And it's just like I never felt like a 21 Pilots. Like, yeah, they're just going for it, you know. It's just like
I would say, and this is off track, but Blurry Face is kind of, it's just a sellout before they could even sell out.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
God.
it's
Like,
like
they didn't have enough to sell out, but they still sold out.
yeah, it's like it's like they're trying over this concept record, but it's just like at the same time, it's like you guys are just. It's like they have this weird thing of like, okay, we want to make this concept record, but also like we really want to break into the mainstream with this record, you know, and so it doesn't, you know, and also Taro Joseph, he just doesn't hit those dramatics. He's just too kind of like, you know, he has too much of an I don't care vibe about him sometimes. I mean, that's kind of I guess the concept of like Blurry Face. It's like I don't care, I'm a nihilist, and it's like, bro, shut the fuck up. No one want to hear that bullshit.
The problem is that bands these days don't meet on forums. And that is the issue that we're facing in the 21st century. in the 2000, well, we're going into 2020, I guess now, right? Like,
Oh,
it's fucking
God.
crazy. But bands are not meeting on forums, going like, okay, so MCR kind of has something going here. Like that's what, like, if I remember correctly, Panic at the Disco met on a forum talking about either Fall Out Boy or MCR, and they were just like, "Oh, like this album is fucking epic," and then made their own to like rival it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we kind of fall off. Not to be like a curmudgeonly old person.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't 21 Pilots like siblings or something?
No, they're not.
No, they're just both Christian.
Oh, shit.
God.
Owie. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to really, I mean, just, it's hard to really discuss because I feel like, I mean, with this album, you know, Gerard, he's not trying to hide any emotions, you know, like, he's very outward with this album, so it's kind of hard to discuss because it's just like, there's not much to kind of dig into in terms of, like, trying to mine stuff out because he's very straightforward, which I feel like was why this album is so good, because it's like, sometimes you just need, like, a straightforward, like, rock record, you know, you don't need to have any, you know, bullshit. I mean, here's the thing, there's still a lot to dig into with this album, like, not to say there's not, but like on just like one listen you can get like, okay, I understand what's happening here, like the emotions and the feelings right away. I get it. There's not much to hide here, you know. And yeah, I mean, I don't think I have much more to say about Famous Last Words, and I think we're kind of, there's not much else to say about this album except for
Should we say some famous last words about the album?
Yes, famous about the album, about My Chemical Romance. But before we kind of get more into that, did you want to talk about some of the bonus tracks or the B-sides and stuff that didn't make the record? Because I know you wanted to discuss them kind of briefly.
Yeah,
Oh.
go off, Kos.
The B-side tracks, like, I'm not so intimately familiar with because I don't even know like how they are incorporated, because I mean, as far as like the songs that I listened to when this album came out, I only had like the standard tracks and the hidden track. But the hidden track, which is just on all the albums, like if you got the CD, I believe you got the hidden track. You have to wait like a minute and a half before you actually hear it because it's just silent at the beginning. And it very much is like the Mama feel. It's very much like guy in like a pinstripe suit standing at like the front of a circus just kind of going off and totally craziness, but it is a little bit more low-key than Mama. But yeah, Blood is a good hidden track. It's very good. It's if you have Apple Music, it shows up on Apple Music. I don't know if it does on Spotify, but
it does. Yeah. Blood is very much just like you enter the red room, like in Twin Peaks. That's really it.
yeah.
I mean, it's just like an after credits scene. You know, it's just like, all right, the credits have rolled.
Yeah.
Here's a little fun kind of things for those who stuck around. You know.
Oh yeah.
It reminds me of one of the A Fever You Can't Sweat Out's tracks where it just like kind of has like the circusy feel, and the title is escaping me, which is unfortunate, but it just has like this very circusy feel. Like he's standing on top of like a little box in front of a crowd full of people and like waving his arms around, and it's just good. It's got a good, interesting ending to an album. Like Famous Last Words is an amazing bang, like as you leave the album, and then like if you stick around, like one of the Marvel after credit scenes, like you get like a little fun, sweet added bonus that not everybody else got, but it's still good regardless of if you heard it or not. You know?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like when bands are like breaking their shit down on stage and like like you're talking to them and you're like, oh hi, thanks for the set, and they're like, yeah, thanks, cool. Yeah, this is pretty equivalent to like Alex G leaving Pitchfork last year. It's like, shut the fuck up, I can't play another fucking song. Leave.
But yeah, I guess so. With the reissue, I think when these tracks came out with a reissue that came out a couple of years ago. For the 10th anniversary, the Living with Ghost bonus disc, which has mostly like live demos of songs that they were trying out. A few ones that did make the record, and then like a couple that didn't make the record. I have not listened. I think I maybe listening is like once when I got the record a couple months ago, but I've not listened to them since, and I don't really remember how a lot of them go, anyways. So, yeah. I mean, what did you have any extra words about those tracks? Like, is there anything you think could have maybe developed into, for the album?
I don't know. I don't necessarily have anything that's worth speaking on. Do you know what I mean? Like any B-sides, like they're good, but there's a reason they're not on the main album. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're just good. I mean, I think anything they do can be fully fleshed out to become a good song, but it would just kind of end up like a I don't love you situation. Like it would be good, but it's
Mm-hmm.
it's just on there.
Yeah, I do want to read the liner notes that they have for this bonus disc. I think it's really good. It's kind of like a little overview of the album itself and the creation of it. When making a record, bands tend to write into infinity and then hold the songs they've created accountable. They set up the lot in front of a firing squad and see which, if any, are worthy. A trial by fire, at least. That's what our band did. If my chem was anything, it was discerning. We kept the bar high and were extremely critical of our craft. At times to a fault, because sometimes that pressure we put upon our shoulders leaked out of the creative process and turned into self-criticism that ultimately fed our personal demons. The recording of the Black Parade was probably the pinnacle of our homemade torture chamber. Thirsty for punishment, we locked ourselves away in a haunted mansion and worked feverishly until we dropped off like flies. The air was often heavy in that house. We lived among ghosts and haunted each other, pushing one another, pushing ourselves, often to the brink, occasionally over the edge, always searching for greatness. It was a time of tremendous stress for our band. When I look back, I think we had something to prove, maybe to the world, definitely to ourselves. We ended up writing close to 30 songs in that month and change, some of which had multiple versions. 14 of them made the record you've come to know as the Black Parade. The rest were sentenced to death in that ghastly manner, and are hopefully still floating around in its halls, perhaps stuck in the head of the poltergeist that kept us awake night after night. Today some of those pieces will rise again, resurrected in this 10-year anniversary release of the album they took a bullet for. Perhaps they were never killed, merely grazed, or maybe nothing ever truly dies. The Black Parade is dead. Long live the Black Parade.
Damn.
Bars.
That shit hurted.
So we kind of been hinting at what happened to this band after the Black Parade. So of course, Black Parade comes out. It's a big success. They tore the shit out of this record. If you have not seen the concert film they did for this, where they performed the album for like the last time in full in Mexico City, and then did like a few weeks later did like a really like small like basement show pretty much in their hometown. Like, it's a really great concert film, and it kind of shows like two different sides of the band, you know, sort of their roots as like this punk band kind of coming up in the New Jersey, New York scene, and then of course, you know, these mega stars of rock and roll. But you know, after this album, you know, like I said, the band had changed. I think they had done, so they kind of put out 2 records after this. There was of course the official follow-up, Danger Days, the Fabulous Lives, or the Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys. And
you can't see me, but I'm putting up a rock on devil's horn sign with my hands.
God. And then of course there was a Conventional Weapons, which I have not listened to. I've never listened to this, although I've heard, you know, a lot of good things from fans of the band of this. And I think basically like while doing Conventional Weapons, which basically came out as like a bunch of like 7-inches pretty much, I think. Am I correct on that?
That's what it says. Yeah, only physical copies you could obtain were 5 7-inch singles.
God. So yeah, basically they were kind of going back to more, you know, kind of a 3 Cheers, more like rock oriented sound. And then basically Gerard was like, no, I want to do this kind of like this comic book thing, because he'd been writing, I think at that point he already written Umbrella Academy.
Umbrella Academy was like pretty old, I think, at that point.
I think it came out like a little bit after Black Parade. I think like a year
like
or so
2000,
after.
Yeah, it was like 2009, I think.
And look where we are now. There's a Netflix series.
It's actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, no,
it's anyways, I mean, so yeah, there's then of course, like between Conventional Weapons and Danger Days, Bob Ryer left the band. Of course, Bob Ryer is the drummer they brought on, I think shortly after they recorded, or like shortly before they recorded 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge. And so, you know, he left the band, so it wasn't like seen as a big deal, because like, okay, he wasn't a founding member, and it seems like, okay, they were kind of, you know, like there's bands that like they wrote, like there's a certain like instrumentalist they'll just rotate through, and it seems like drummer was like, okay, for My Chem it's going to be their drummers. Like for Weezer it was like their bassist, and then, you know, for My Chem it's their drummer. Like it makes sense, you know. And then of course, you know, Danger Days comes out, and it still has kind of a mixed response among fans, and I don't remember liking it a whole bunch when it came out, and I feel like if I went back to it, I'm not going to find a whole lot to really love.
See, and this is where I differ with you, because, and I've really grown to love Danger Days, but when it came out, I remember like all my friends were like, oh, this is not My Chem, like this is so different, it's not what we were expecting, which totally makes sense because it is just so far from the Black Parade.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Danger Days is a very good concept album, whether or not like it necessarily translates perfectly to what their style was or what people were expecting, or just generally, I think it's well produced. I think it has a good narrative. I think it's interesting to keep your, like, I think you can keep like listening to it and not be confused about what's happening. Like, I think it's a fairly good album. I don't think it's the best. I mean, I'm a poptimist, so like when I hear it, I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. But I mean, I think you said before that like it was very much Gerard's vision, which makes sense because it is very comic booky and very out there. But I stand behind it. I think it is one of the better concept albums of like the 2010s and on.
Yeah, I think I like from the fan response, it just seems like it would be a fine album, you know, but it's just like for the follow-up of the Black Parade, you know, it just like, it's like you guys take, you know, 3 or 4 years and this is what you come up with. It's like obviously it's still a concept album. If anything, it seems like a much more like, you know, much more focused concept album, you know, in terms of like building a stronger narrative, you know. But at the same time, it's like, like the more synthy sounds, it just never suited them, you know. Like that's kind of why, I mean, when they start playing with more of the synth stuff on this album, I see, like, it's probably for the best that they ended things when they did, because it's like I don't think they would have survived in the alt landscape now, because they would, they seem like the type of band that would adapt to the trends of the time, and I just don't think they'd be able to pull it off, And I feel like that's what ended up, like, breaking up the band, was that, like, I think Gerard wanted to get a bit more into a synthy electronic direction, and the rest of the band wasn't as into that, And I feel like, this album was basically as far as he could push them into that direction, before, obviously, they finished their tour, and then, not like while kind of making the next album, they kind of realized, yeah, this just isn't going to work, But I mean, at least, of course, now, Gerard Way put out a solo album back in 2012, 2013.
Pretty good. Yeah.
It was 2014, the whole Hesitant Alien thing.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then, of course, now it's, a bit more focused
Frank Iero has had something going on for a while, too, with Celebration. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're all on, they're kind of doing their own things now. But, of course, Gerard Way actually has dropped a couple solo singles within, like, the past year. And, like, 2 or 3 of them have featured Ray Toro on them. So, it's good to know that at least, like, they ended things on good terms. And, like, I will ask this. Do you guys think that Mike Kim will ever reunite? Maybe not.
Absolutely not.
No, yeah. I don't think so.
Not even for any type of, like, reunion shows or anything. And, now that the Black Parade is old enough to be angsty, in terms of, like, album age, it's just like, they haven't come back at this point, and I don't think they will. Sorry. No, sorry. It's okay.
I was just going to say, I think that they all have too much going on in their own lives and their own creative ventures, that they just don't have a reason to go back to My Chem. Like, they did it, and it's good, and they don't want to spoil it.
Yeah. And it's like, I feel mixed, because, obviously there's probably just, I think there will be a time where it will be right for them to kind of come back and reunite, but, like, yeah, at the same time, they're all off doing their own things, they're too busy, and I think they're all kind of, like, they're artistically satisfied with what they did, and they don't really want to break that legacy, Because I feel like, they've seen kind of what other bands around that era, like, what they've become. Obviously, we talked about Fall Out Boy, we talked about Panic at the Disco, how they're both, like, very much, like, shells of their former selves. And, of course, you can't make the same music forever. I don't expect that, I don't want Fall Out Boy to keep making the same, like, tired,
Okay, but Centuries was bad. Let's all
agree. Ooh, yeah, it was bad.
It's like, you can't...
Uma Thurman at least was kind of interesting, but...
It's like, you can't make the same music forever, especially when it comes to, like, pop punk and stuff like that. It's like, it is very much like, you can't be in your 30s and making music like that. Of course, we saw what happened with Blink, and it's like, okay.
Ooh. Yeah,
we've seen that...
Blink died a long time ago, but if you age your music in the way that the Wonder Years does with pop punk, like, at least make it classy.
Wonder Years, American football to an extent with how they've aged a little bit, I guess when Jawbreaker, if they end up actually putting out a reunion album, I guess we'll see. Although I've never listened to Jawbreaker. I'm just kind of making, like, kind of an assumption. Just making an assumption. Yeah. But I don't. I mean, here's the thing. I want to say they'll never reunite, but at the same time, it's like, you never know.
I don't know. I think they've seen, like I said before, like, they were considered, like, the emo trifecta. Like, if you liked MCR, you liked Fall Out Boy, and you liked Panic, and it was basically vice versa for all of them. But I think they saw what happened to Fall Out Boy, and they're currently seeing what's happening to Panic, and I think they can all recognize that it's just not worth trying to top what they did. I think they could top it. I think, like, that's not in question at all. I think they're all such creative, amazing individuals, and they could top it. But I think that they recognize that the Black Parade was just such a good album Danger Days was good, but did not have the same recognition. I mean, there's a lot of varied ideas on Danger Days, and I get why people don't like it, and I get why people do like it. But I think that at this point, it's like, okay, it's 2019. It's not the same landscape. We're different people. We have fucking kids,
Oh yeah.
Like,
no, they're all, like I said,
they're all in, like, their 40s now. They can't reunite.
Right. Yeah. No offense to all my boys in my chem, but aren't they sleepy?
Oh god, Gerard is like 41. Holy shit.
He's 42.
Jesus Christ.
Oh,
Yeah,
Gerard was
yeah.
only born like 6 years after my parents. That's why it's just like they can't get back together, man.
God.
You either stay together or you just break up forever. Okay.
To be fair, like Mikey and Gerard are brothers, so they definitely see each other all the time. I have to imagine that at some point, like Mikey and Gerard just sat down at like family dinner one Sunday night and were just like, "What if we got
Fuck
the band
this."
back together?"
I mean,
And,
I think they have like a year. I mean, I've heard sort of have like a yearly barbecue or something like that. Like everyone getting back
Oh my god,
together with
that
their
sounds
families
so
and whatnot.
fun.
So it's like here's
You
like
just gotta.
it's like if it happens, like they're all on good terms. You know, like the band members are on good terms as far as we know, except for maybe like Bob Breyer. But Bob Breyer, you know, he's not an OG member. He don't count. You know, he's not a founding member.
Oh God.
And I think apparently he was a dick to like Mikey. So like I don't think they
Everyone
would want
was
him
a
back.
dick to Mikey.
This is true. This is true. But I guess before we kind of again, I guess now we can get into our famous last words. I feel like it's obviously like has like a very profound impact on like people who listen to it, and I think we're, as we mentioned, like with like, you know, albums like Blurryface and like certain artists, I guess, you know, that have popped up. The influence of My Chem is still very much felt in alt rock, even though the sound of alt rock is very much changed. You know, like it's not rock music anymore. Like it's pop. Like, I'm not sure if
It's still rock and roll music with guitars, but
if you consider Lovely the band rock and roll music with guitars, you just no. Like, don't speak to me. Has anyone heard that I Like That You're Broken Like Me song on the fucking radio?
No.
Oh,
No?
ew.
I don't listen to the radio.
It comes on and I'm just like,
It's bad.
yeah.
I just want to throw this in there. I think there will be a resurgence in like emo alt, you know, just like in the mainstream.
I mean,
because I think a lot of us are reaching
kind of is.
There is, but it's not happening in rock music. It's happening in rap music right now, you know. But it's sort of like it's the ugliest head of emo, you know, where it's like Juice World and like XXX Tentacion and like art, you know. And in some ways, Little Peep, but Little Peep is not as toxic as, like, you know, XXX and Juice World, you know? Like, but, you know...
Like, literally toxic, yeah.
Yeah.
I just think, and maybe this is just my point of view, but I feel like there's a lot of people, at least that I know, that have felt that nostalgia and that pull towards something that is just hardcore and unapologetically theatrical and glam, and I can see it coming back, but I know it won't be the same, but I can see it having a resurgence.
It's definitely
2020s.
coming back, I would say, because I mean, like, bands like definitely a smaller band, I've seen them live before a few times. They're called Pity Party, and you can definitely hear how Gerard Way has influenced, like, you know, new music, even with just, like, you know, his vocal inflection, play style, and everything, like, very much like spitting at the microphone, you know, saying what you want, being very unapologetic. But there's very few bands that do that. There's very few bands that even attempt it anymore. And
I think, like I said, within the mainstream, there's not a lot of rock bands that are, like, for an album, they're not going for it. Not within the mainstream. Like I said, as I mentioned, the closest comparison right now to a Black Parade, in terms of a band going for it right now, is Foxing's Near My God. And that should have been, if it was on like a more high profile label, that would have been a big breakout record. Like, I could hear stuff that, like, that would be on, like, alt stations and whatnot if it got the right push, you know? And that is sad. It's sad that record actually did not. I mean, like, with the right people, it definitely landed. Like, they definitely got.
yeah.
They definitely ended up, like, gaining a decent amount of fans from that record. I mean, me included. You know, but, like, you know, didn't hit the mainstream like it probably should have. You know.
Yeah, like, Lich Prince is very on. I wouldn't say like it's equivalent to the Black Parade, like Welcome to the Black Parade as a track, but it's definitely like very similar to it, and it hits right, you know, where it's supposed to hit, and, you know, like, it's good, but like you said, you know, not a lot of bands are really going out there and doing shit.
I mean, yeah, within I mean, obviously, it's just mainly, it's like, it's not to say that this is not having an indie rock. Obviously, you know, we have like Car Seat Headrest, for example. I'm talking about, I'm, like I said, very explicit talking about the mainstream, like whatever mainstream rock bands that we have left, they're not really going for it. They either are, you know, like riding on nostalgia, like your Black Keys, your Jack Whites, and what I mean, Jack White, even like a Jack White album where he goes for it is still very much like it's just like a weird experiment, not like this like grand concept, you know.
I think we do have to admit though, like at this point in time, like this was a very conceptually vulnerable album. Like as we get further away from it, we're like, oh yes, like the Black Parade, what an amazing album. It was so critically received well, like it was amazing. But if you think of like it was kind of a leap when it came out. I mean, 2005 there was a lot of stuff going on, but like to release such an intense rock opera concept album, like it's kind of a big deal. Like, and so like you guys are saying, like you don't see this kind of jump happening from people, but it's difficult. So I guess my famous last words as far as this cast is going is I just would like to see more albums throwing themselves out into not necessarily a conceptual narrative, but something that changes the landscape. That's a lot to say, but something that is new. Don't like rely on old things, but you can use it as, I don't know, ideas to push you forward. But just fucking go for it. Like, I don't know. That's my famous last words.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have much more to say that I haven't already said on this record. It's a classic record, you know. It is a modern classic, you know. It is a record that I think was very important for a generation of people. And it's and compared to some of their, you know, their peers at the time, it's an album that does hold up very well, you know. Like this is still a very tremendous album now, you know. It's very of the time of 2006, but again, it still is like a very consistent effort from the band. That I do wonder if there's any complaints. Obviously, I feel like I would be intrigued to see how they change the track listing. Like if this is a record that came out on a more indie label, like how the track listing would change, you know? Because I feel like there's definitely some songs in here that's like, okay, like they're kind of this is for the label, this is for us, you know. It's like they're trying the hardest to kind of figure out how to make it fit within the record, but it's like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I love this record. I feel like if you are on. I mean, if you made it this far, you're definitely a My Chem fan. But if you are still somehow unconvinced to listen to this record, give this record a shot. Give My Chem a shot. They are a band that were tremendously good, and they're a band that, you know, they had that nice little mix of like just appealing to what the mainstream was into at the time, but also still very artistically being themselves, you know, and not compromising their vision as a band. So I love this album, and yeah, those are my favorite last words. I don't know.
Yes, the Black Parade as a whole, it's just good. Like you guys are saying, like if I were, you know, dying, I'd probably put this on it. I'd say, okay, let me live my life like how the Black Parade wants me to live my life, and I'm going to think about this a lot. You know, if I were going to hell, I'd want to put this on as soon as, you know, the boat started rowing. It's good. It fits right where it belongs. It's a very 2006 album, but listening to it now, years later, it's just like, I feel like I should have been a bigger My Chemical Romance fan, because then I would have been able to, you know, like go to a show, maybe see it, but, you know, with my mom in the back or whatever. But
I mean, that's honestly why I would want My Chem to reunite. It's just like, man, I would love to see My Chem live, because I never got to, because I never, you know, I wasn't aware of concerts and shit when I was a kid, you know, so you know, I literally wrote fan mail to them once, like asking them like to come play near my house, and like gave them like directions and everything of like,
oh my god, that's so here. Cute. You give them a map quest.
Yeah, it's like you land at the airport, and then you go to Clark Bridge, and then you turn left here, and then you turn right here, and then you do. I'm like literally, like it's like I fucking dox myself for My Chem, guys. All right,
dear Gerard, Mikey, fucking just like everyone else in the band, I'm such a big fan. Like the fucking letter from Always Sunny, just like I'm such a big fan, and I love you so much. I think we have a lot in common. Very relatable.
I've read the Tiger Beat articles. I know everything about you.
God.
On a side note, like now that podcast is ending and we're like done with the actual meat of the album, I was on the A Fever You Can't Sweat Out Wikipedia page, and in the track listing section, it just says all lyrics written by Ryan Ross. It's like thank you. Finally.
Ryan Ross probably put it in himself.
Yeah,
I fucking wrote it.
I just saw a photo of him and Brie Larson like walking down the street together, and I was like, wow, both of my bisexual awakening icons in one photo. But has nothing to do with Micah, but podcast with her. So
I mean, like, yeah, Hawthorne Heights never lasted. They would not have been able to last. My Chemical Romance, I mean, like, they probably would have lasted until at least like 2017 maybe, if like they pushed it real far, but you know, they ended it at the perfect time.
Yeah.
It was good. This is Black Parade, like I said, it's supposed to be their last album, but you didn't, so.
Ryan Ross is 32. Sorry, now I'm getting distracted.
Okay, let's all right. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this podcast. Hopefully again we'll get some more Retrospect episode or another Retrospect episode out. Hopefully before the end of the summer. Like I said, we do want to take our time with these, and we do want to kind of make sure that we're doing the right records for these. You know, like the stuff that's really important to us. And of course, once again, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Monrovian Prince, Corinne at Corinne Heaven, Kasia Sad Yelp Review, and of course follow the podcast at Indieheads Pod on Twitter. Subscribe to us on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Of course, we just got on Spotify not that long ago. Go support us on there. Wherever else you get podcasts, of course, you can obviously direct download the podcast on our WordPress. All this info is on our YouTube page. Can't really do this for like iTunes and Spotify and whatnot. You can't really do external links and whatnot. So, you know, YouTubers, you know, YouTube folks get the most complete package of the Indieheads podcast. Yeah. That's all I think that's all we have to say. So
oh yeah.
All right.
Saddest yeehaw ever.
I am really glad we did this.
Yes.
And I hope to be on more.
And once again, let's give a warm welcome to Kasia and Corinne. Of course, Corinne on her first podcast as an official member, second podcast ever for the Indieheads podcast. And of course, Kasia, of course, has cameoed on a number of podcasts. Of course, now official member of the Indieheads Pod. And this is their debut again. You both did a very good job.
Yeah, I was definitely one at like a certain point, and then went rogue, and now I'm back. But
well, good.
Like, yeah, this is like the first official pod that I'm on, in which I am not just like jumping in to say like I really love Ed Sheeran.
God, enough. All right, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. We will see you all the next time that we are back. And yeah, bye.
Bye.
Bye.